The storm came without warning. One moment the sea was calm, and the next, the sky turned black and the waves rose like mountains. Thomas, a poor fisherman who spent every night on the ocean trying to catch enough fish to feed his family, was pulling in his nets when he heard a sound that made his heart stop. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of small moments to change lives, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness True Stories. Also, tell us in the comments, where in the world are you watching from? Through the howling wind and crashing waves, he heard a scream. It was faint, almost swallowed by the storm. But Thomas had spent 30 years on the water, and his ears were trained to catch even the smallest sound. He dropped his nets immediately and turned his small wooden boat toward the voice. The rain was blinding, and the waves were tossing his boat like a toy. But Thomas did not stop. He kept rowing, kept pushing forward, kept listening. Then he saw it. A large white yacht, cracked and sinking fast, being swallowed by the angry sea. Without thinking twice, Thomas jumped into the freezing water. His whole body screamed in pain as the cold hit him, but he swam harder than he ever had in his life. Tied to a broken piece of the yacht's railing was a young girl, maybe 17 years old, crying and shaking with fear. Her hands were bleeding where the rope had cut into her skin, and her lips were turning blue from the cold. Thomas reached her, broke the rope loose, wrapped his arms around her, and swam back to his boat with every last drop of strength he had. He pulled her into the boat, covered her with the only dry cloth he had, an old fishing jacket that smelled of salt and sea, and rowed through the storm for 2 hours straight until he reached the shore. He carried her to his small house, where his wife immediately took over, warming the girl, giving her dry clothes, and feeding her hot soup. The girl was too exhausted and frightened to speak. She slept through the entire next day. Thomas never asked questions. He never looked for a reward. He simply sat outside his small house and thanked God that he had heard that one faint scream in the middle of the storm. On the second morning, the girl finally woke up properly. Her name was Isabella. She was quiet at first, watching Thomas and his wife move around their tiny home, patching old nets, cooking simple food, laughing softly with each other despite having so little. Isabella noticed the holes in the roof that had been covered with plastic sheets, the worn-out shoes by the door, the single light bulb hanging in the kitchen. She noticed how Thomas's hands were rough and scarred from decades of hard work, and how his wife quietly counted the few coins left in a small jar on the shelf. Yet neither of them complained. Neither of them made Isabella feel like a burden. They treated her like she was family. On the third day, a black car with tinted windows pulled up outside the small house. Men in suits stepped out, and behind them came a tall man with silver hair and sharp eyes that were red from crying. When Isabella saw him, she burst into tears and ran into his arms. It was her father, Richard Caldwell, one of the wealthiest businessmen in the country. He had been searching for his daughter for 3 days straight, not sleeping, not eating, offering millions to anyone who could find her. When he walked into Thomas's house and understood what this simple fisherman had done, Richard Caldwell, a man who had sat across from presidents and CEOs and never once showed emotion in public, broke down completely. He gripped Thomas's scarred hands in both of his and could not find words for a long time. Thomas told him quietly that he did not do it for money, and that anyone would have done the same. But Richard knew that was not true. He had heard many stories in his life of people walking away, of people being too afraid, of people calculating risk before acting. Thomas had not calculated anything. He had simply acted from the heart. Richard did not offer Thomas money, because he understood that a man like Thomas would likely refuse it. Instead, he quietly took care of everything Thomas needed. The holes in the roof were repaired. The boat was replaced with a stronger one. A small savings account was set up in Thomas's name for his children's education. And every year after that, on the anniversary of the storm, Isabella would return to that small house by the sea, sit with the old fisherman and his wife and share a simple meal. She said it was the most important place in the world to her, because it was where she learned that the greatest people are not always found in the greatest houses. If you were touched by this story, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Kindness True. Stories for more real and emotional stories that remind us of the goodness still alive in this world.